to episode 2 of He Said, She Said. Kyle, it's very nice where you're at. You're like out in the garden.
I'm just kicking it on my deck. We call it the Delano deck. And I've got my palm tree in the background. And I've got my hat on because I do ride the sled. So I've got to represent. And,
you are representing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's all good. So we're going to talk tonight about intentional romance.
Yeah, I love it. I've been doing nothing but thinking about what that means.
Interesting.
Me.
Well, I know we talked about that last week, right? So I brought up the conversation of intentional romance, and so I was talking to the Queen about it afterwards. And it's not something that we had, I guess, discussed. I don't necessarily say that I came up with that on the fly. However, what I mean by intentional romance, and to get us serious right off the chute, is that I don't know about you, but in my former marriage, I just kind of went with the flow, right? I just kind of took it how it went. I really didn't put a lot of forethought into it. I was kind of almost reactionary all the time, right? So, I didn't really, I would treat my business one way, but I would treat my personal life just kind of like whatever comes, it comes, right?
Yeah.
And, I think that our marriage suffered for that. And I take partial responsibility for that too. However, one of the things that I think most marriages lose out on really quickly, and you mentioned this last week, was that kind of the romance just fizzles, right? I mean, the kids get in the way, and you're out trying to, live like the Joneses, and you're doing all the family things, right? And so the person that you agreed to spend the rest of your life with, and the one that you would probably end up being with after the kids are gone, you guys kind of break apart because you lose intention. You don't work at it. And I know that I was guilty of that. I'm sure that you probably were too. And so I took those things, and even, post-relationship, post-marriage, and I was going into relationships, it really wasn't the same. I was kind of getting into those same habits, right?
Yeah.
So intentional romance, as sterile as that sounds, it's really something where I work at it. And I know that everybody says you got to work at relationships and so forth, but I really don't know if we quantify what that means. We just kind of say, well, you got to work at it. Well, yeah, you got to work at lots of stuff. But, what does intentional romance mean? 3.5 years later, I would argue that the Queen, our romance is stronger now than it was when we first met. And I don't think a lot of people can say that. I don't care if you're dating or married.
Actually, it's interesting because I wrote a blog post. I'm trying to think of when. And I titled it effortless, extraordinary, effortless love. And people went crazy. Effortless? Effortless? It's work. And I thought, I agree. But there's a difference between work, trudging your axe out there to chop down trees every day and sweat to death that hurts. Or effortless in my mind is, yes, we commit to it, right? We commit to what we want it to be, to look like, meaning our relationship. And it takes attention, but when it becomes work where it's I don't want to do that, that's a whole different ballgame. It should feel effortless, but still need daily, constant attention. That's how I feel about it.
Because it's something you want to do, right? We all have heard the cliche, right? If it's fun, you never have to work a day in your life. If you enjoy what you're doing, you never have to work a day in your life. So if it's something that you want to do and it's fun when you want to do it, then you're right. It doesn't feel like work. You're putting forth effort for it, but it doesn't feel like you're trying.
That's exactly correct, because it's what you want. And it's interesting because I, too, in my marriage, I have to take total responsibility for the fact that once we, got down the aisle and we whooped it up that night and had an awesome wedding night, that I fell very quickly into the fact that I was now a wife, and I was very shortly after that a mother. And, not that shortly. I didn't, I wasn't showing at, in my wedding.
You're saying it wasn't shotgun?
I wasn't shotgun, But it was not that long. And the truth is, I fell so completely into, making sure that the table was set every night and the kids were all bathed by the time that he got home, that I did not at all put attention onto the fact that, I wanted, I would have wanted a relationship that was like juicy and fun and sexy. I didn't even think about that. There was no intention there. The intention was focused on something completely different, definitely not on the romance part. So I do want to hear from you though, because you made a comment that I thought was interesting. I've been thinking about it, which was something to the effect of that you and the Queen, for some, it might feel sterile or it might feel rigid. I don't even know what the words were that you used. But I kind of wondered, like, do you schedule things? Like, what's intentional for you guys?
Well, here's an example, all right? And I would like to take full credit for this, but I can't, all right? And neither can she, okay? It was from a book that we had read, and I'll go back in a second, and we can talk about the book too, because I personally think it was a game changer, at least for me. But anyway,
nice.
Periodically throughout weeks or relationships or so forth, okay, I think that me and her understand each other well enough. We will ask periodically, how is your love tank? Have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
Yes, I have it. It sits next to my bed.
Okay. In there, he talks about the love tank, right? Is your love tank full? Is it empty? Are you getting what you need? We will ask each other that question often, because to us, if we see something is going on, like, depressed or upset or something, we'll have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
How is your love tank? Well, that opens up the conversation. Well, I'm really feeling down about this, or and you can begin to open up the conversation that way because you've asked something that both of you understand, right?
Right.
I asked her to read that book a month into our relationship.
Really?
Absolutely.
Impressive.
I asked her to do it because for me, I had read it. Like I said, it totally changed the entire way that I approach relationships, because a lot of things after I read that book made sense for me. Mm-hmm. All right? And I know that we're giving props to that book, but I don't think it needs more than it already has right now. It's international bestseller. However,
exactly.
I asked her to read that book because I wanted to try to understand her a little bit more. And because of that, right, and because of the way that she responded to that book and the things that she said that were her quote-unquote love languages, it helped me become more intentional. For example, she was feeling down recently about something. I don't know why. I just went out, and I know this sounds cliche, but you have to know me. This is something, Laura, that I would have normally never done, right? I went out, stopped what I was doing, went out of my way, took flowers to her house, and surprised her with them for no other reason than I thought that she was going through a tough time. Now, I can tell you, that may not sound like a big deal, and it may not, but for this dude, huge. Huge. Because I would have never done that. First off, I wouldn't have been sensitive enough to know that. But secondly, I know that part of that is how she responds.
Let me stop you. I want to ask you a question. Why is it important? Why did it become important to you with her to be different than you might have been in your marriage? Because I know that lots of women tell me, there's no men that feel that way. I'm like, yes, there are. There's lots of men, and many of them feel that way. You just don't know it, and you cannot label them based necessarily on the marriage they just came out of.
Well, I would like this, a couple of things. When I got out of my marriage, I wasn't like that, okay? I really continued down that same path that I'd gone down before, all right? I mean, I started dating way, way, way too early, all right? Like, way too early. Anyway, I started going down that same path, and what I found was that a year and a half, 2 years later, I really wasn't any farther along than I was before. So I said to myself, all right, The only similarity between you and all of these girls or women is you. The problem must be with you. And I'm serious. I mean, you think that, this probably sounds like he's full of crap. I'm dead serious. I mean, the only problem was me, because these women didn't know each other, but yet I continue to find myself going in the same direction every time. So that's when I put the brakes on the dating, just shut down pretty much, started to really focus on trying to figure some stuff out with me, right? Then I started to figure those things out. So when the queen came into the picture, right, I felt like, all right, she seems to have everything that you're looking for. You've got the opportunity here to either do this right or screw it up again. What are you going to do for this time, right? Because, I mean, it's like I was moving into my 40s, and I'll be honest with you. I was terrified of being that old bastard at the end of the bar hitting on the co-eds when he's 55. I scared me to death, right? So I'm like, well, either you have to change this dude or you're going to end up being there. If somebody asked me to define what I consider intentional romance, all right, since that's our topic.
Yeah.
First, you have to be premeditated. And that's where the sterile comes in, right? You've got to think about it beforehand. You've got to plan some shit out, right? You've got to actually work at it a little bit and actually think about something. So first thing, you got to kind of be premeditated. You just can't, what are we doing this weekend? Oh, I don't know. I'll figure it out. No, dude, stop what you're doing for 5 minutes and think about something, right? Figure something out, all right? Number 1. 2, you got to do it and not necessarily expect something in return. Mm-hmm. Just, you know what? You want to get her flowers? Get her flowers. Not with the expectation that you're going to get laid later that night. Just do it, man. You notice that she had a bad day or you want to do something nice? Do it. Those 2 things alone. If guys, and I'm just speaking for dudes, and I'm sure it's the same thing for women though, if guys would just do those 2 things only, I think their relationship would be exceedingly better than what it is. And I understand that 3.5 years is not a lifetime, but how many relationships go sideways in 6 months?
You know what? Listen, hey, Drew and I are going on 5 years, and let me tell you something. It is no different for women. And my word of advice to women, and I love yours, is just do it because you want to. But for women, I would say the same exact thing. Do it because you want to, and it's not a sign of weakness, right? Because I often hear, but isn't he supposed to do that? No, I think,
that pisses me
right?
off when people say that.
What, right? He's supposed to do that. I'm supposed to sit back and be this fair maiden. You know what? Bullshit. You can be feminine and strong and also be able to, look at your guy and say, he needs me to do whatever, whether it's not going to be flowers, most likely. But there are, masculine forms of, or things that are symbolic of the flower giving. And, it's okay to do that. And it's okay to say, I'm doing that because it's powerful because he needs it. But it doesn't make me weak or less feminine to do that.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question because I'm just going to tell you right now, on behalf of all the women, on behalf of all men, and you're representing the female gender, you guys are confusing the shit out of us. Grown up to respect a woman's independence, right?
Okay.
They can do things on their own. They don't need a man. Especially women, and I think it's beaten into a lot of women that they don't need a man for anything, right? Confirm that, yes or no?
I'm not sure. Keep going.
Okay. So how does a man respect a woman's independence? I think this speaks volumes to this intentional romance thing, right? How does a man respect his partner's independence, but still maintain that level of white knight that every woman wants? Because there's a fine line there between being the chivalrous white knight who wants to save the princess and making her feel like she can't do anything on her own. And I'll say that to say this, because I was having a conversation about something along these lines once, and the person, and this is a woman, she said, he knew I could do it, but it was the simple fact that he asked first, right? Does that make sense? So he acknowledged the fact that it was something, just the fact that he asked it was enough, even though she's a completely independent person, didn't need it. That's just confusing for guys. It's like, who do you want us to be? Do you want us to respect your independence or be the chivalrous knight? Which one is it? So here's the deal. You've got a couple, right? And we'll speak from the woman's perspective, because I guess it seems the woman always complains about the fact in a relationship that he stopped trying, right? Mm-hmm. Normally, wouldn't that be, is that a safe assumption to make, that it's usually the woman who complains that he has stopped trying?
Right, he doesn't want to talk about it.
So, what if you've got these two opposing forces, right? So he doesn't feel she's trying. He doesn't say that, but he probably in some ways has. And she doesn't feel that he's trying. Something's got to give.
And I know what it is.
What is it?
And actually, this is going to be our subject next week. It's curiosity.
Say what?
Curiosity.
You're going to have to elaborate.
Being curious.
About what?
Right? About why that's happening. About being able to talk to each other in a way that's curious and not challenging. Changing our challenging to curious.
You lost me there.
I know. I can see that I completely lost you. But the truth of the matter is that if you're in something and you start to feel that way, instead of looking at it as, why did he stop caring? Why did he stop whatevering? You have to be curious before you challenge. You have to be able to want to know what's going on in a feminine, playful way.
You asked me earlier, what was it about the Queen that was different, all right? And I said that I learned some things, and that's true. I went into the relationship with the Queen from day one, understanding that the rainbows and the butterflies that I had day one was going to go away. I knew that it was complete garbage, that it would not be like that forever. Because as I thought back on my other relationships, they were all the same, right? All the rainbows and butterflies were there and everything was great, you know. And then all of a sudden, the last butterfly flew away and I'm like, well, it must be over. It's not working for me anymore, right? And I knew going in with the Queen that would eventually stop. Now, I still have rainbows and butterflies and all that stuff with her. I don't think it's the same as it was when we were, 3.5 years ago. I think it's better. It's that I have to kind of put the rainbows and butterflies there, just like she does, just like you do, right?
Right. That's the intentional piece.
I've got to make sure they stay there.
That's right.
And it's not something that she can do.
That's right. There's a difference between attracting love and sustaining it.
That was what the difference was. I think that I went in with the Queen clear-minded, knowing that, dude, all this that you're feeling right now, the warm and fuzzy feelings, they're going to die away. And if you're prepared for that, then you'll know that once those things go away, that's when you really start to have to be intentional about stuff. Right? After about the first 9 to 12 months, the last butterfly flies away, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to have to start putting a little bit more effort into it, right? Instead of talking, before I could talk to her for 3 hours, it was fine. Now, if I'm going to talk to her for that long, then I got to work at it, which we don't do that anymore, right? But I have to be intentional because I knew I was going to have to be when I went into it from the get-go.
There's no other way. There's no other way. If you're not intentional, it will not stand the test of time. That's how I feel. It has to be intentional. And it doesn't matter if you're a parent. You're a parent, correct? You've got 2 children.
Absolutely. So does she.
And so does she, and I have 2, and Drew has 2. So it's not, it's not simple, but it is intentional. And I think that that's where, the rubber meets the road, and that's where, you know what, that's where we separate the men from the boys, the ones who want to keep it going, the ones who want to really enjoy it and take it to the next level.
Guys,
that's how I feel.
Directed to the guys. I just want to reiterate what I talked about before. Stop doing things in hopes of getting something in return. Because eventually, if you're afraid, and I know how guys think, they're like, well, dude, she's just going to take advantage of it and expect it next time. Let's play that out first. Don't make the assumption that's what's going to happen. You know what? And if that's what happens, then you can deal with that then. But don't sit here on the one end and say, I really want to save my marriage, but I don't want to do anything to save it. But
right.
Just, you stop trying to get something in return, right?
And I would say to the women, you got to meet them halfway. You have to contribute equally. This is co-creating. It's not his job to create this. It's a co-creation. It's a mutual process, and it empowers us. It doesn't diminish us, or it doesn't signify weakness in any way to feel that same way of wanting to give for no reason at all.
Right, and if he wants to open the door for you, let him open the door. And get on your car and warm your butt or do whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
And not just mow the lawn.
No, not just that.
Whatever.
Well, it won't be so little after you post this on YouTube. It won't be so secret, actually. So Drew and I, we have this thing. I'm just gonna. It's an example of what one can create. So I'm not a night person. Shocking, I know. I'm a morning person. Drew is not a morning person, and he is much more of a night guy than I am. So we have our day and our night rule, which means in the morning, I bring him coffee in bed. I make sure everything is done and prepared, and I make the bed, and I make his lunch, and I make sure breakfast, the whole bit. Everything is done that he can ease into the day nicely and smoothly. But when 6 o'clock comes in the evening, dude, I'm out. I'm out. I'm done. I could do anything. I'd like a glass of water. I'd like a snack. I don't have to do a blessed thing. Nothing.
He takes care of business.
Oh yeah, everything. 100%. It's my time because it's just not. I'm just not night. So you know what? I'm so fine with it. It works so nicely, and everybody gains, right? I mean.
Now, a lot of people would say, and I can think about this right now, right? A lot of people would say, well, that's just a rut. I mean, after a while, doesn't that get old? Don't you want him to make you breakfast some mornings and all this other stuff? You know that's what they're saying, right?
But you know what? Did I ever say that I gave up my right to say, you know what, this morning I'm very tired and I just feel like I need you to bring me my coffee? I did not give my right up. I did not say anything about giving up rights. And you know what? He loves me, and so therefore he'll be like, you know what, this sucks, but I'm going to get you a cup of coffee. And you know what? It's all right. I'm okay with that. And you know what? There's some nights he just not going to happen. And I'm okay with that. And that's the intentional part.
Not expecting something in return. You've got to be premeditated about it. That's the way that I approach it with the Queen. It's worked for 3.5 years absolutely splendidly. And I don't plan on changing anything.
Me neither. So I think we got to talk about curiosity next week.
Okay, you're going to have to lead that because I have no freaking idea what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll lead that and I'll kind of drive the whole thing. But for the moment, I know we are longer than we intended, but you know what? Intended. There we are. We're back to intentional. Everybody, let us know your thoughts on intentional romance. So we want to know.
So we're talking next week about curiosity killed the cat.
Killed the cat.
All right. See you, Laura.
Peace out. Bye.